It may seem like some people move through life as if they need no one. They appear completely self-sufficient, emotionally untouchable, and unaffected by relationships. Maybe you've loved someone like that, or maybe you recognize those qualities in yourself. From the outside, they seem calm whenever others would be heartbroken. They walk away without much emotion, keep people at arm's length, and behave as though nothing can truly reach them. But what most people misunderstand is that this distance isn't proof that they don't feel. It's often the opposite. They feel so deeply that they've learned to protect themselves by hiding those emotions. Once you understand that, the way you see avoidant people begins to change. Behind the silence, the emotional shutdowns, and the constant need for space is someone who rarely admits how much connection actually matters. And the truth is, they only experience a truly deep bond with a very rare kind of person. If you've ever cared about someone with avoidant tendencies, or if you've struggled with them yourself, this is something worth hearing. There comes a point where the carefully built walls begin to weaken, where control starts giving way to genuine emotion. Most people never witness that version of them. They only meet the guarded exterior, the part that keeps everyone at a safe distance. But the few who manage to reach beyond those defenses often become unforgettable. Once an avoidant lets someone into that protected place inside, that connection leaves a mark that doesn't simply disappear. One of the biggest myths people tell themselves is, "I don't need anyone." It sounds powerful, almost like a badge of honor. Many avoidant people convince themselves that relying on others is dangerous, that love creates vulnerability, and that independence is the safest way to live. If you've tried loving someone like this, you already know how lonely it can feel. You can sit beside them, talk for hours, and still sense there's a part of them you can't reach. The independence they show isn't always confidence. More often, it's survival. It's a strategy they developed long ago when closeness brought disappointment, when trusting people ended in pain, or when love never felt emotionally safe. Over time, they taught themselves that depending on someone only leads to heartbreak. Those lessons don't disappear with age. They quietly shape every relationship they enter, influencing how they argue, how they retreat, and even how they express love. Even if they repeat that they're better off alone, human nature tells a different story. Whether someone has an avoidant, anxious, or secure attachment style, we are all wired to connect. Deep beneath the fear, every avoidant still longs for closeness. Many simply don't know how to admit it, sometimes not even to themselves. Pay attention to how they respond when emotions become intense. They may seem composed most of the time, but conversations about feelings often make them uncomfortable. As intimacy grows, they suddenly become distant. When commitment enters the picture, they ask for space. It looks like indifference, but underneath it is something very different. Fear is driving those reactions, not a lack of care. They're afraid of being fully known because being seen feels risky. The irony is that they desire love just as much as anyone else. They crave understanding, affection, and emotional safety. But when those things become real, panic often follows. Love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability carries the possibility of rejection, abandonment, disappointment, and emotional pain. So instead of moving closer, they instinctively pull away. They build stronger walls, and everyone mistakes that behavior for emotional strength. From the outside, it appears they've mastered being alone. Inside, however, they often carry the same longing for connection that everyone else does. The belief that avoidant people don't love deeply or don't need relationships is simply inaccurate. They absolutely do. They just struggle with what to do when genuine closeness arrives. If you've been close to someone avoidant, you've probably experienced the contradiction yourself. One day they're warm, open, playful, and emotionally present. They laugh more, share personal thoughts, and allow you to see a softer side. Then, without warning, they become cold, quiet, or distant. It's easy to wonder if those earlier moments were real. They were. The openness was genuine. The withdrawal that followed wasn't the truth of how they felt. It was fear taking control again. They don't retreat because they stopped caring. They retreat because caring feels overwhelming. Many avoidant people spend years trying to convince themselves they don't need emotional closeness. They bury those desires beneath work, distractions, endless goals, or constant productivity. They fill every empty space to avoid confronting the loneliness underneath. They may insist they're perfectly happy alone, but when everything becomes quiet, there's often an emptiness they can't explain. The few people who truly know them can usually sense it, even when they never speak about it. Every now and then, though, life brings someone different into their world. Someone who doesn't chase, pressure, or force intimacy. Someone calm, patient, consistent, and emotionally safe. Without fully understanding why, something inside the avoidant begins to soften. For perhaps the first time in years, connection doesn't feel threatening. It feels peaceful. Because those experiences are so uncommon, they become unforgettable. Even if they never admit how much that person meant, the bond remains with them. They may act as though they've moved on, but deep inside, they rarely forget someone who made vulnerability feel safe. That's why the image of avoidance as emotionally detached loners only tells part of the story. Their independence is often the identity they created to survive. Underneath it lives the same desire every human shares: to be loved, understood, accepted, and safe with another person. They've spent so many years believing self-reliance is their only protection that opening their heart feels like breaking a lifelong rule. Yet that's exactly why their connections become so meaningful. When someone who believed they needed no one finally allows another person into their inner world, even a little, that experience transforms them. A bond that required so much courage naturally carries extraordinary weight. So the next time someone withdraws, shuts down, or seems emotionally unreachable, remember that distance doesn't always mean rejection. Often it's protection. It's fear of vulnerability, fear of being hurt again, fear of depending on someone and losing them. Seeing that changes everything. Instead of interpreting every step backward as a lack of love, you begin recognizing the frightened part hidden beneath the composed exterior. You stop chasing and start understanding. You replace pressure with patience. Avoidant people don't need someone to rescue or fix them. They need experiences that slowly teach them closeness doesn't always end in pain, that love isn't guaranteed to become loss, and that needing another person isn't weakness. It's part of being human. The armor they wear may look like independence, but underneath it is the same heart everyone has: the longing to belong, the hope of being accepted, the desire to feel completely seen without having to hide. Most people never reach that place with an avoidant person. They only know the guarded version. It's possible to spend years with someone like this and still feel locked outside their emotional world, wondering whether you're enough. But their distance usually isn't about your worth. It's about the belief they formed long ago that closeness is dangerous. Still, there are rare exceptions. Every avoidant has the capacity to meet someone who quietly slips past their defenses. Not because that person chased harder or demanded more love, but because they never activated the fear. They brought calm instead of pressure, consistency instead of chaos, and safety instead of uncertainty. That's often where everything begins to change. It isn't that they force the avoidant to open up. Instead, They offer an experience the avoidant has rarely, if ever, known. Their presence feels calm, predictable, and emotionally safe. Rather than feeling trapped, the avoidant begins to feel comfortable enough to stop running. Imagine someone who has been burned over and over. Eventually, they become afraid of every flame. But one day they discover warmth that doesn't hurt them. Suddenly, something changes inside. They realize not every source of heat causes pain. That's what this rare person represents for an avoidant. They don't magically erase years of fear or tear down every emotional wall overnight. What they do is consistently show up in a way that doesn't activate those old defenses. They offer peace without pressure, affection without overwhelming expectations, and honesty without emotional chaos. That combination feels unfamiliar in the best possible way, and little by little, the armor begins to soften. Ironically, many people who love an avoidant respond in ways that accidentally reinforce their fears. They chase harder, ask for constant reassurance, and desperately try to close the emotional distance. That's understandable. When you love someone, you naturally want to feel loved in return. But to an avoidant, too much pressure confirms the belief that closeness is overwhelming and unsafe. The rare person breaks that pattern completely. They don't get pulled into the endless cycle of pursuing and withdrawing. They stay emotionally grounded. They care deeply, but they don't demand immediate proof of love. They give space without disappearing. They remain present without becoming controlling. For perhaps the first time, the avoidant doesn't feel cornered. This doesn't mean accepting unhealthy behavior or pretending emotional distance doesn't hurt. It's about showing up authentically. That person quietly communicates, "This is who I am. I'm not going to chase you, but I'm also not abandoning you." That balance between healthy boundaries and steady presence creates something many avoidants have never experienced before. From there, the change happens slowly. The walls don't collapse overnight. They lower one small piece at a time. Maybe they begin talking more openly about their day. Maybe they laugh more often. Maybe they hold your hand a little longer than they normally would. These moments may seem small, but they're signs that trust is quietly growing. If you're the person creating that safety, you may not even realize how much you're influencing them. Avoidants rarely announce that they're beginning to trust someone. They don't usually say those words. Instead, you'll notice it in subtle ways. Their guarded expression softens. Their warmth becomes easier to find. The distance between you becomes a little smaller. None of this comes easily. Every instinct they've developed tells them to retreat. Opening up feels like exposing the most fragile parts of themselves. It goes against everything they've taught themselves about survival. Yet they choose to stay anyway. Not because they've suddenly stopped being avoidant, but because something about this relationship feels worth the risk. That's exactly why these connections are so uncommon. You can be caring, patient, and deeply loving, and still never reach that hidden part of an avoidant. It's not simply about effort. It's about emotional safety. It's about whether your presence calms their nervous system instead of activating it. When they meet someone like this, they recognize the difference, even if they can't explain it. At first, they'll probably resist it. They'll move closer, then create distance, then return again. Those mixed signals aren't always games. They're often silent questions. Can I really trust this? If I pull away for a while, will you still be here? When the answer is calm consistency instead of panic or pursuit, something inside them begins to change. They slowly accept that safety can actually exist inside a relationship. That doesn't mean they suddenly become perfect partners. They'll still have moments where old fears resurface. They'll still need time and space occasionally. But something fundamental has shifted.
They've learned that closeness doesn't automatically erase their independence. They've experienced love without chaos. They've discovered that intimacy doesn't always lead to pain. Once that realization takes root, it rarely disappears.
The connection itself becomes part of who they are. The beauty of this process isn't found in dramatic confessions or grand romantic gestures. It's built through quiet consistency. It's created by someone who remains present without becoming controlling, loving without becoming possessive, and honest without creating emotional storms. When an avoidant meets someone who brings that kind of balance into their life, everything begins to change. They stop seeing relationships as something they have to escape. Many people assume avoidants are destined to choose distance forever. In reality, they're often waiting for someone whose presence feels emotionally safe enough to challenge everything they've believed about love. When that person finally appears, the connection isn't casual. It's not based only on attraction or excitement. It becomes one of the deepest emotional experiences they'll ever have. Their walls may seem impossible to break. Their silence may feel endless. Their emotional distance may appear permanent, yet all of that can begin changing because one person showed up differently. No matter how carefully they protect themselves, even avoidants are searching for someone who finally makes running unnecessary. When an avoidant truly bonds with someone, it isn't just another relationship. It carries enormous weight because they're choosing the very thing they've spent years fearing. They don't hand out that level of trust easily. Everything they've built has been designed to protect themselves. Emotional distance became their survival strategy. So when those defenses finally come down, it represents one of the biggest risks they've ever taken. That bond reaches far beneath the surface. People often assume avoidants move on easily because they sometimes leave physically or become silent emotionally. But genuine attachment isn't always visible. When they've truly connected, they often continue carrying that relationship internally long after the distance begins. This isn't about obsession or refusing to let go. It's about the fact that real emotional safety changes them. Once they've experienced it, their understanding of love is never quite the same again. What makes that bond so meaningful isn't physical attraction or convenience. It's the feeling of peace that came from finally stopping the need to protect themselves. That experience leaves a lasting imprint. They may build new relationships and meet wonderful people later in life. But if you were the person who first made love feel emotionally safe, that memory remains unique. It wasn't simply about who you were. It was about how your steady presence reached the deepest parts of their fear without triggering them. Experiences like that are incredibly rare. Of course, this doesn't mean every difficulty disappears. Growth is still a process. They may continue pulling away sometimes, because old habits don't vanish overnight. But if you became the person who helped them believe they no longer had to hide, you've left a mark that stays with them. Arguments won't erase it. Time alone won't erase it. Distance won't erase it. That's why people often become confused when an avoidant withdraws after forming a deep bond. They wonder whether the relationship meant anything at all. The answer isn't found in moments of fear. You have to look at the entire journey. Even when they retreat, become quiet, or convince themselves the relationship didn't matter, the deeper truth usually remains unchanged. It mattered. It was real. And the person who reached beyond those walls often becomes the standard against which every future connection is quietly measured. Very few people ever reach that depth, not because they lack value, but because trust of that magnitude is incredibly difficult for an avoidant to build more than once. Imagine spending years protecting yourself from vulnerability, only to meet one person who completely changes your understanding of love. That's more than a relationship. It's a turning point. Avoidants don't give that kind of bond lightly. When they finally do, it changes something inside them that can't easily be undone. It's not only about loving another person, it's about overcoming their own fears enough to finally let someone in. If you've ever been that rare person, you may not even realize it. You probably felt like you were simply being yourself, but to them, you became proof that closeness doesn't always end in pain. That's why they rarely forget. Even when life moves on, even when they appear detached, they often continue carrying that connection quietly within them. So if you've ever questioned whether your relationship with an avoidant was genuine, remember this. If they truly allowed you past their defenses, it was real. It likely meant far more than they ever found the words to express. They may never openly tell you how deeply you affected them. They may never demonstrate it in obvious ways. But inside, they know who helped them feel safe. They know who changed their understanding of love. And they know that experience becomes part of them. Most people misunderstand avoidant love because it rarely looks dramatic. It isn't always expressed through constant words, grand gestures, or emotional displays. But when it's genuine, it becomes one of the strongest and most enduring attachments they will ever experience. The difficult truth is that most people will never witness that side of an avoidant. Not because they aren't worthy of love, but because fear prevents the avoidant from letting most people reach that level of trust. That's why many relationships never move beyond the walls. If you've loved someone avoidant and never felt them fully open up, don't automatically believe it reflects your value. More often than not, it reflects the fears they've carried for years. They enter relationships expecting disappointment. They assume dependence will eventually bring pain. So even when love is offered generously, it often struggles to reach them. It's like pouring water onto solid stone. Until they truly feel safe, very little can soak in. To someone outside the relationship, it can seem like nothing you do ever truly reaches an avoidant. Your care is noticed on the surface, but it never appears to sink in. That isn't because your love lacks value. It's because they've spent so many years protecting themselves that they've become emotionally guarded. Their defenses are so strong that very little gets past them. Most people only meet the version they show the world, the one that's charming but reserved, warm yet emotionally distant, interested but never completely open. You can often sense there's something much deeper beneath the surface, but no matter how much effort you invest, it feels impossible to reach. Naturally, that makes people question themselves. They wonder if they simply weren't important enough. The truth is, it has very little to do with being special. What truly matters to an avoidant is feeling safe. Safety is what unlocks the parts of themselves they've kept hidden for years. Unfortunately, many people react to emotional distance by trying even harder. They ask more questions, seek more reassurance, and push for greater closeness. While those reactions are understandable, they often have the opposite effect. To an avoidant, that pressure reinforces the belief that intimacy is overwhelming, that closeness threatens their freedom, and that opening up always comes at a personal cost. So they retreat even further. The rare person who reaches them doesn't succeed because they're somehow better than everyone else. They succeed because they respond differently. They don't chase after affection. They don't pressure the relationship to move faster. They don't plead for emotional validation. Instead, they remain grounded, patient, and consistent. Without realizing it, they create something the avoidant has rarely experienced, a relationship where closeness doesn't require losing themselves. That changes everything.